head coach of the New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton. How are you, Coach Payton?
I'm doing fine, Rich. Thanks for having me on. It's not often you hear a former right tackle do the play-by-play.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing that Zach's doing it. He's doing a great job. He's doing a great job.
He's done a great job. He sure has.
So what does this record mean to you, Coach?
Well, look, I said this during the week to our players. I think, number one, it's significant, obviously, and there's so many people that are involved in it. I think as a coach, the pressure that we felt was to make sure we played well and won when it happened. I think there'll be a time later where we look back on the accomplishment and the amount, but I think the winning was most important that night, and I think putting a game together like we did on Monday Night Football. We talked the night before that each player going out and playing his best to make sure this night was special for the team, but also for Drew, and I think they did that. So. Man, it doesn't seem like 13 years, though. It seems like 6 or 7 years, and it doesn't seem like it's been that long of a period of time. And I think the thing that still drives him, that still drives me, or our players that have been around quite a while is the opportunity to win, try to win another Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, and so much has been discussed of that moment, I guess 13 years ago now, or 13 seasons ago now, when you arrive and, as we're seeing a hurricane bearing down on the Florida Panhandle while we speak right now, Katrina had just ravaged the town. I'm wondering, and we're talking so much about Brees's shoulder and the decision that was going down with Miami and New Orleans. What was your first conversation with Drew Brees as head coach of the Saints? Was it involved in trying to get him there with his free agent process?
Yeah, I can remember specifically. Number one, we were at the Combine. It was the last day of the Combine. We found out that San Diego was making the decision to let him go. We were in a quarterback search mode at that point. We were looking closely at the quarterbacks in the draft, and also looking at a lot of quarterbacks that we felt might be able to hold the fort. Give us a few good years until we found the right guy. And so a lot was going on with us as an organization in the search for that position. When he became available, we spent some time. Obviously, the injury was something that we had to discuss. We felt that there was some risk there, and yet it was worth investing in. So very quickly, we were involved in calling him. I can recall speaking to him. He was in Birmingham rehabbing with Andrews at the time. Meanwhile, Josh McCown was someone. Josh was actually on a flight to New Orleans after Drew had taken his visit. And once Drew had taken his visit and went from New Orleans, then he went on to Miami, and then the following week called and said he was coming to New Orleans. Josh was on a flight connecting somewhere in Charlotte or Atlanta when Drew had committed to us, and quickly we had to call him and say, hey, we're not going to have that opportunity available right now. But so there was a lot of digging going on relative to the position, but I think the feeling from our standpoint was there was going to be some risk. We had to take some risk with the idea that, on the back end, it could turn out to be something really, really good. I don't know that any one of us would have expected what's happened since.
It is amazing. It really is amazing how fragile those moments were and what a foundation you and Drew Brees have been able to build and build upon. At the time, Sean Payton here on the Rich Eisen Show, knowing it's your first shot at being an HC in this league like this, right? And knowing what system you wanted to bring and the scheme you wanted to bring, what did you see in Brees that you thought this is my guy?
Well, there were 2 or 3 traits that you just couldn't ignore. Smart, tough, accurate. That had followed him, man, all through college, and you knew that he had the grit, some of those other essential things that were going to help him in his recovery and his rehab. In other words, if he couldn't recover from this shoulder injury, then it's probably likely that no one would have been able to, because it was something that there was no precedent relative to the injury he had. It wasn't like, well, he had an ACL. This is you hear the percentages, or he had an ankle or whatever. This was a fully torn rotator cuff shoulder injury for a right-handed passer. So all those intangibles, but the athleticism, the intelligence, and the accuracy, I think, were things that stood out. And the challenge for us was recruiting, with a city that was still half in shambles.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We had Reggie Bush on yesterday, Coach, where he said that he wanted to get a trade to the Jets, and instructed his and that you were having none of it, and told his guy Orny, who's as we all know, a legend in the NFL and the football world. You told him that's not happening. That's what he said.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that. That wasn't quite the language, but
that's what he said.
It was all happening within a month, and we were able to secure Drew and move towards the draft then with a little bit more freedom with that pick at number 2, and hopefully take the best available player. And so as you start getting ready for that process, and Reggie fell that first night, I mean, obviously Mario was taken by the Texans. Now we're on the phone with him, and hey, we're making this selection, and Orny's his marketing guy, so it's rare that he gets even a chance to get on the phone conversation. But Orny is, if anyone doesn't know Mike Ornstein, he'll find a way to get on the conversation. And I'll never forget the condescending coach. Look, I know you're going to do a great job in this league, but the kid doesn't want to come and play there. So you need to get this trade to the Jets worked out. He went on for about 5 minutes, and then quickly we put that to bed. So.
You put it to bed. Fantastic.
It was an all-time conversation. It wasn't really a conversation, but anyway. So there were these pieces that came into place in different ways, and the same relative to me getting hired. I'd just gone to Green Bay and thought I was going to get the Packers job, and was on the interview here and really wasn't paying much attention to it, and there wasn't a lot of interest because of the challenges you saw. I mean, this was a tough job before Katrina, and then post-Katrina, it just looked miserable.
It really is amazing. And then it's interesting you mentioned Green Bay, which brings me to my next question for you, Sean Payton, where you see, Aaron Rodgers sometimes say some things into a microphone that we in the media term as a passive-aggressive way to talk about the scheme and the coach. And there's a book out now about Belichick in which there's a large section about the relationship between Brady and Belichick, and the whole concept of, well, when you're around each other for years in a marriage, there's going to be some problems. It seems like I never hear that about you and Drew Brees. Why does it work so well, do you think, with you and Drew?
I was asked that last week, and honestly, I don't ever take it for granted. I think that the goal is clear and is common. Man, I don't know. It's I think people feel like, oh, you guys must be close friends. You're around. I mean, I coach and he plays, and man, there's a tremendous amount of respect. I think that certainly we have as coaches for the work he puts in and the preparation that goes on, the attention to detail. And I feel like that same challenge is always on us as teachers and coaches to come up with the best plan and to put our best foot forward and to really put our players in a position to have success. But I would guess that each relationship's somewhat different, maybe a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, like I said in the onset, it doesn't seem like 13 years. And I mean, he can be corny sometimes. And I mean,
what do you mean?
As I'm trying to come up with something, like he can be a real goofball or corny, and I'm sure I can be the same way. Or
But you have a disagreement?
Someone asked me, did he ever do something to make you really angry? And
Yeah.
I said, I really wasn't angry, but when we went down to the oil spill in south of Louisiana after the oil came up from the ocean surface when we had that tragedy, and we went down to help all the families, be there, feed them, sign autographs. And we were on live with Anderson Cooper, and it was Brees, myself, and then Anderson Cooper back in Atlanta or wherever he was. And, you have the little earpieces in, and we're going to cut to you. And the moral of this story is don't ever let Brees go first. Anderson asked him a series of questions. Drew elaborated, pontificated, whatever you want to say on each one of these questions. And each time he answered one of these questions, I thought, well, there goes another topic that I might be able to talk about when he comes to me. And then there goes another topic. And then pretty soon I'm down to like one in my pocket, and it was the state pelican. They were washed with ivory soap. And I thought, I'm going to hang on to that. And then sure enough, at the very end, Drew says, yeah. And the pelicans even are getting clean with the ivory soap. And then we click over, Coach, we're going to you now. And I looked at Brees, and he handed me like a Hooters chicken wing with just all bone. There's nothing left to the story. So you don't want to be the second person in an interview with him.
Noted. I'll make sure that that does not happen if I ever have the two of you on at the same time, Coach.
Yes, it's not a good thing.
A few more minutes left here with Sean Payton on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get to the here and now. Mike Thomas is his Twitter handle is Can't Guard Mike. Sure looks like that's the fact, and he catches everything. His completion rate, Brees to Mike right now, is off the charts. He's only missed on 3 connections, the two of them. What makes that work so well in your mind?
Well, it's a great question. Number one, the two of them work their tails off. Mike is someone that stays after, is there early. There's no walkthrough snaps, even though it's a walkthrough. For him, it's full speed. There's a physicality and a presence with him, his size, his strength. He's very difficult at the line of scrimmage if you're trying to press him. And I think that's one of the things that stands out most. On Thursdays, I'll go out there and you get a lot of bump and run man. Thursdays are third downs. We're simulating that as a coach and go out and kind of press these guys and have some fun with them. And I did this a year ago with Mike, and he released off the ball with his hands like whack, whack. And right away, I remember just being stunned. And for the next couple of days, I felt like I was in a car accident. And I've done this for years with Colston and you name it, Devery Henderson, Lance Moore, Robert Meacham. This was the first time that I had a finger pointing sideways. I had a bruise on my chest, and it just felt like I don't want to ever do that to him again.
That makes sense. And then your kid from San Antonio, who you traded up into the first round. I'll be honest with you. I was sitting there on the draft set, and I heard you traded up. I'm like, okay, here goes Lamar Jackson, and you took Marcus Davenport instead. How is his development? Seems like he played his best game to date this past Monday.
He sure did. I was real pleased with how he played the other night. He was slowed a little bit in training camp with a groin injury. He's healthy now, and the last 2 weeks, you're starting to see, he's a young player, but very quickly getting acclimated and comfortable over on the right side. He's long. He's got real good strength. And his development will be important for us defensively and as a team.
All right. And then my last question for you here, Coach. It is with a little bit of self-interest. I'm not going to lie. I'm always going to be straightforward with you, as always. But I'm also representing a very large section of the fantasy football playing public. Alvin Kamara with a mere 9 touches in Mark Ingram's return. How panicked should I be about Kamara's touches?
No, I think, man, I'm sitting tight, but it was one of those games, honestly, where I wouldn't have guessed he had 9 touches, and yet we had some big, long scoring plays that were quick strike passes. When that happens, then your total play count's down, and then your amount of touches gets reduced. But Twitter has gotten to a point now where within like a half a day, I'll have just some awful tweets about how I have just crushed someone's fantasy with Taysom Hill taking a handoff for a touchdown and Kamara on the bench, or it's unbelievable because ultimately there's a lot of players that are talented. Alvin certainly is one of them, and I wouldn't worry, but I was unaware that it was only nine opportunities, but it didn't take long before I found out that was the number.
Yeah. The term is vultured, by the way, in the fantasy
world.
Industry. Yes, in the industry. Like so Taysom Hill getting a look. I can handle Ingram getting a couple shots from the one, but Taysom Hill vulturing that Kamara touchdown. It's a bitter pill. I'll be honest. It's a bitter pill. So how concerned should I be? Do you think?
If I'm you, this is me. If I'm you, I'm sitting tight.
Okay.
I kind of like the Alvin Kamara fantasy prospects.
Okay.
I like the player a lot, obviously, and
all right.
Hopefully we'll find other ways to get him into the end zone.
Okay, just understand this. Look, you do what you have to do, clearly. You have your own...
I just still want to make sure that when we see each other, Combine, Senior Bowl, wherever that is next, I don't get that, look.
No, it's
I get the friendship look.
No, just know this. On the 1 yard line or 2 yard line in the future games, just know you owe me one. That's all. Just know you owe me one when you're dialing it up, okay?
Oh, you're solid.
Sean, really appreciate our chats. You take care. Again, congrats on the milestone. You had a front row seat for it. You're the one who's making the plays and making calls and being part of clearly an operation that Drew Brees is crushing. So congrats on that.
Rich, I appreciate it.
You bet. You take care. That's Sean Payton.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.